Hello everyone, welcome once again. Fourth day of our refresher course series on forensic accounting and investigation. I'm sure all of you must have seen your WhatsApp today.
मेरे बैग में है
We spoke about the various frauds, various scams that are happening through SMS and everything. And I think therefore all of us, one thing that is keen and one thing that has stuck to all of us, one thing that is common every morning is we check our WhatsApp and all. So today I'm sure you must have seen WhatsApps about the multidisciplinary firms and all of this that have been announced here. So I think these are some of the wonderful moves that ICAI is making headway towards. So today, when we talk about forensics, I think one of the essential skills that we can bring and drive in is engineering. Wherein we can do a lot of data analytics, we can do a lot of data mining, deep diving, and all of this. So to set up all of this, today we have got a very, very dynamic personality, someone who's a great academician, someone who's got great hobbies, and someone who makes even the boring of the boring things becomes so interesting when he talks about it. We have with us our Central Council member, Jay Chaira sir with us. I also have Manish Bhai. I recognize the presence of Manish Bhai and the Vice Chairperson Drishti Desai madam here. And my colleague Rekha Damankar madam from Pune. Speaker of the first session, Rushabh Bhatt from GT is also joined us. So welcome all of you to this fourth day of this series. To start off with, let me invite, as I mentioned, Jay Bhai, Jay Chaira sir, someone who's very close to not only students but members and everyone. When you talk about academics, when you talk about passion, I think Jay Bhai is one person that we all look up to. So we welcome you, Jay Bhai, and I request you to please share your address and also guide the audience in this space of forensic investigation accounting. Over to you, Jay Bhai.
Thank you very much. The chairman of our region, the largest region, CA Manish Gadia ji, the dynamic person, vice chairperson, CA Drishti Desai, CA Arpit Kabra, CA Rekha Damankar, CA Rushabh Bhatt, and all my dear friends. A very, very good evening to all of you. Let me first compliment the WIRC team for coming up with these novel ideas, novel programs. I have seen that, in the last few years, WIRC has started doing wonderful programs covering 360-degree view of the profession. Earlier, I think the major programs were only confined to income tax or GST or, maybe even audit. I think even today, many of the branches are still very much around these things only. But I think this is a very important program of 5 days where you are discussing about forensics and about accounting and all these things. So my compliments to WIRC. Well, I've been told that today you are going to discuss about price forensics. And one of the aspects that I have been told to discuss with you means Arpit Kabra told me that, sir, when you are discussing with young chartered accountants, kindly ensure that you talk about number one, the pricing factor. And very rightly told by him, very rightly told by him. And number two is about networking. And third one, let me start from my side, net worthing. So first and foremost thing, friends, what is happening? This is a profession of knowledge. We are happy about it, right? This is the profession about, the skills. But unfortunately, compared to or commensurate with our skills, we are not charging. That is a fact. I think many of us would agree that compared to what we should charge, probably we are charging little lower than that, or in some few cases, much lower than that. So this is one major concern. By way of that, probably we are devaluing ourselves. So very rightly said by Arpit that pricing of service is very, very crucial. Very crucial. Now that you are coming with forensics, what we have seen is, what or even in GST we have seen that if people were charging 10x for GST, within 2 years it has come down to X or 2x. So I don't understand. Whenever we get the opportunities, how we can be so wonderful in converting them into threats, right? That is what we are actually doing. In forensics also, I have seen that in the initial period, same with the insolvency profession. People are charging handsomely well, but I don't understand why. Why slowly and gradually people want to adopt the model of, I can say, penetrating with lower prices. I don't think that model is justified. See, work is going to increase. Work is definitely going to increase in leaps and bounds, without any doubt. The only thing is that the skill set is going to change with technology, with changing economy, with changing expectations of the people. Today, what is happening? We have to understand one thing. The world is the same, but when different people look at the same world, they look at it differently. We have to start looking at the world from the angle of our service utilizers, means those who are using our services. Now, what is happening? We learned in our auditing that we are watchdogs, but somehow world looks at it as if we are bloodhounds. We do understand that we are talk about true and fair duty, but the world feels that when a chartered accountant certifies, it is true and correct, right? It cannot be, there cannot be any errors. And frauds is something, people cannot even imagine. This is how people look at it. This is how people look at it. Because of that, expectation of the society, expectation of the regulators, government, corporates, our clients, industry has increased a lot. Against that, see, we don't have any problem if expectations move up. That is good. The only challenge is that commensurate with the expectation of our fees are not going up. We don't mind if we have more, work to do. We don't mind if we have to look into more aspects. We have to go into further analysis. We have to dip that. The only issue is that, as against that, we are not commensurately charging. So I think very important thing that Arpit told me, and that is our pricing. Well, one of the major issues is if you price less, then believe me, you attract two things. You will attract those clients who are going to pay you less or lesser, right? When you charge less, you are going to attract such type of people only who are very price conscious and not quality conscious. And second, with lower prices, ultimately you end up with some compromises in services, and then ultimately the disciplinary committee of ICAI is waiting for you. You have the peer review mechanism, right, which looks into those aspects, whether the fees have been properly charged or not. If it has not been charged, whether the quality of the service is maintained or not. These are all the issues. So I would just tell the youngsters, please ensure that proper fees are charged. And if you feel that this is not the market where the proper fees is being charged, please think about other services. Chartered accountants are very versatile. We can think about so many services, right? We can be wonderful business consultants and can actually help the businesses in any of the areas of business. So I think that is it. Another thing that I was told is kindly talk about networking. So friends, fortunately, ICAI has come up with the network guidelines. I was the convener of the group, and after long deliberations for 21 meetings, we have come up with the networking guidelines, and we have come up with many flexible models like alliance, like network models with lead firm or traditional network models. I would request you, spare only 20 minutes, not more than that, only 20 minutes, and go through the document. The document is quite self-explanatory. Chartered accountants are very good at interpreting. Within 20 minutes, you will get a very clear picture of what are these various models. And I would urge youngsters, come together in alliance, come together in network, and we have to create larger firms. Fortunately, our Prime Minister also shared this vision of 100 lakh large firms. This is what is the vision of the Council for a decade. Right? We want a conducive environment. For that, we require government to support us, regulators. At the same time, we want our mindset to join together. We are still into the traditional mindset of individual proprietorship, or maybe 2 or 3 partner firms. Time has come up where we come together, create networks, and ultimately go into mergers. I think that is the need of the hour. I'm sure you are going to learn quite a good thing on forensics, which is a very, very emerging area. So I don't think I should extend beyond this. I must thank WIRC for 2 reasons. Number one, for organizing such wonderful programs for our youngsters, all our chartered accountants, and secondly, to the WIRC for providing this opportunity to interact with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jai. And I think the passion with which you talk about networking, I think if people come together, really almost 10% of this, I think we can really set up some very good networking firms. And the dream of 100 large firms can definitely be true very soon. And I think it has huge advantage, absolutely. So I think that's the best thing. Takeaway is 20 minutes. Please spare 20 minutes and read about these guidelines, as Jai has mentioned. and I think I'm sure it's going to help all of us to evolve in a structure. Moving on next, we are gonna we've done a lot of nuances on the forensics. We've done a lot of investigation, the types of investigations. We've done a lot of practices and heard various opportunities from various departments. We were supposed to have SFIOs today, but due to an urgent call on a very important case, I think Rishi Golji had to excuse himself. So therefore, he'll not be able to join us as of now. So therefore, what we are going to do is we're going to talk about a very important aspect, which was not part of the structure, that is the report writing, the essentials of report writing. And I must really thank my friend here, C. Rushabh Bhatt. Sir, please. Jai Bhai, thank you. Thank you, Jai Bhai. Sir, Jai Bhai, sorry, you have a vote of thanks. So we're moving on with this program. Next is we want to discuss about essentials of report writing. Let me invite my colleague Rekha Madam to please introduce the faculty, C. Rushabh Bhatt, for all of us.
Good evening, all of you. Am I audible?
Yes, madam.
Yeah. So good evening, all of you, to this very unique forensic refresher course. It's a fantastic move by the WIRC, I must say. I think it's the first such kind of a refresher course in the history of ICAI. I had never seen that such refresher course was happening on the subject of forensics, which is a need of the time, need of an hour. Jai Bhai just said that we are watchdogs. We are moving from watchdogs to bloodhounds, but I think we cannot be bloodhounds, but we can at least, we should start biting whenever required. So we have Rushabh Bhatt with us. He is a very eminent faculty for today's session. Rushabh Bhatt ji, welcome. I would like to briefly introduce Rushabh ji. Rushabh Bhatt ji is Associate Director, Forensic and Investigation Services of Grant Thomson India Limited. He is a chartered accountant. Rushabh has 10 plus years of experience in forensic services, auditing and accounting. He has experience of fraud investigation, accounting, budgeting, audit of multinational companies, forensic audits assistant, and fraud risk management. Risk management is again a very good upcoming area. He had led multiple forensic investigations, which were recently and currently outgoing in the public domain, which is currently going on. His experience includes working on assignments across various countries, EPC, infrastructure, real estate, logistics, financial services, FMCG, and all that. So we have such an eminent faculty with us. Rushabh ji, we welcome on behalf of WIRC. Manish ji, Arpit ji, Drishti ji, Jai ji, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. And over to Rushabh ji, over to Rushabh Bhatt. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rekha madam. Welcome, Rushabh, on this one. Yes, once again, chance for you to create the wonderful session on report writing.
Sure. Thanks.
Yes.
Thanks, Arpit. Thanks for giving me this opportunity. Thanks, Rekha ma'am. Thanks, Manishji. Thanks, WIRC, for giving me this opportunity. Let me just open up my presentation. Is it visible to everyone?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Okay, let me just, Arpit, as you rightly said, you removed topic of Rishi sir. I mean, I call him Rishi sir because he's additional director SFIO. I've been working closely with him and I know which important call he's on. And with that itself, and I would have been truly honored if he would have been the part of this. I mean, speaking in front of him it's absolute pleasure. And I would also put it across in a way that since we are talking about reporting and etc., one thing which is very important is work with the regulator once. You work with Economic Offense Wing, you work with SFIO, you work with CBI, you work with ED, you work with any regulator once, you will understand what they go through. And as the first topic which Arpita and our keynote speaker talked about was pricing and all that. When you go through that process and when you go through that report writing stage, you will understand how difficult it is to write a report. Report is just, it's not just a document, but it's all the hard work which we do from start to end during an investigation. And hence it requires lots and lots of efforts to be put in. We generally speak about how sort of investigation takes 1, 2 to 3 years and so, but please, if you go and speak in when your report is been interpreted by judges, uh, I have attended Supreme Court hearings and all that. Please see how the judges view your report. You require evidence for each and everything. There are witnesses who change. There are people who sort of go down. There are multiple things happening. So reporting is one document which is very important, which documents each and every trail or each and every hard work which you have done from start to end, and that can't be done without significant efforts and significant premium charging from the clients. With that being said, let me just the first, as I said, the views in this presentation are my personal, and there is nothing related to it in the professional capacity. With that, I will move on to the topic we'll be covering. Yeah.
Rushabh, the screens, so we can see it's not a slideshow, it's like we can see both the slides together. So next slide is also, that pane is also coming for next slide.
Okay, hold on. Yeah, I will just. Just a minute.
Yeah, in the display settings, you can.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. Can you see my full screen now?
Perfect.
Oh, with that being said, let me just go on to the topics to be covered, which I'll cover it in 8. I am aware that the time I've been given 30 to 35 to 40 minutes, and I'll be covering it in that this thing. If we get time, we'll try and test our knowledge of what we have learned during this. Moving on to the next one. What's a forensic audit report? I would simply put it across as I described earlier, that it is a document which describes the hard work which you have done during the investigation which has been carried out by you. 3-4 essential things is what have you observed during the forensic audit? What are the evidences? What are the facts you have gathered? Why is it an anomaly and why it should be there? Why is it unusual to you? And in case if you are sure that there is some wrongdoing, then what's the modus operandi in which it was carried out? And ultimately, everybody which is interested, all the stakeholders are interested into one important thing, is quantification, which is what the financial impact of the anomaly, whether proved or not proved, what's the financial impact of the anomaly there. With that, the objectives, so that clearly tells us what should be the objectives. The objectives should be based on the stakeholder, who the stakeholder is, and important is how that stakeholder can utilize our report, who is helping us to get the assignments, what is his issues, and how can address his issues. That helps us saying that enables the user or the stakeholders of the report to take appropriate action. It can serve as and help initiate litigation against the suspected parties. It helps as a evidence in the court of law. This also, the one important thing which always is missed is that once any potential fraud happens, there are obviously weaknesses or inefficient controls in place. and how can the management or the stakeholder can address that going forward. With that being said, it is important responsibility as a chartered accountant, as a forensic auditor, to bring the financial stability in the country. And by being a forensic accountant, I believe that the more we sort of fight against these financial offenders, we would eventually lead to India being a corruption-free economy. Moving on to next one is, who are the readers of the report? Here, obviously, everybody is aware that, company insiders, the invest senior management who has given us the assignments, the stakeholders are important, the equity shareholders are important, the attorneys who are planning to being appointed by the company insiders are planning to file a case, the regulatory authorities, the financial institution, the bankers who have sort of lended the money to the company, and the media. Why I wanted to bring this out is the fact that there are multiple people looking at your report, which reflects your hard work, as well as the way you write each and everything. Everything is scrutinized in detail. Nowadays, if you see, there is everything is out. There is nothing being stopped from the media or anybody else. So you need to ensure the wordings, as well as anything else which is being there in the report is being carefully chosen, as well as put across properly. What prior to jumping into techniques of report writing or so, what are the important characteristics? We need to understand, as we rightly said, that prior to doing any work, what it should contain, how it should be, and what are the essential things about a person needs to be there in place. That way, that itself, in a way, in forensic audit report writing, what are the important things which we need to ensure on an overall basis, which helps our report on a very our report factually very correct. The first few things, I will start from the structure. The structure and the logical sequence of your report is very important. I will talk about this on a later on session. But the structure, there is no structure to the information, if for example, every time B comes only after A, so if B comes before A, then there will be an issue to the reader of the report to understand what you're trying to interpret or what you're trying to say. So your structure, everything is always in the importance and the logical sequence, which helps the reader of the report get the knowledge. And always ensure that whenever you prepare a forensic audit report, it should be from the reader's perspective. Reader is may be a chartered accountant, may not be a chartered accountant. As I told you, there are media guys, there are general publics, there are regulators who are reading this report. Not necessarily everybody is sort of has the same hands-on as you guys are. So it needs to be in a format or a sense which clearly tells what you want to say out. The second one is objectivity. That should not be hampered at all. You are a forensic auditor. That is, you are not supposed to interpret facts, or rather than interpreting bias towards certain facts or something, you are supposed to present it without any bias. We do have blind spots when we get in forensic assignments. We tend to sort of create or have that kind when we go on to the client that there is definitely something wrong, may not be. What you need to do is objectively look at the evidences, objectively identify and look at the anomalies, and then report that. You are not supposed to look whether this look good or whether this evidence look bad or not. You're not supposed to sort of play that. You are just supposed to represent facts in a proper manner. With that being said, giving the clarity, as I said earlier also, it should be easy to understand, easy to be understood by the third parties and by the independent parties. who would not require, because this investigation goes on ages, and it is important that whether you are in an organization or not, whether you are individually practicing or not later on, that once you have issued the report, you do become liable for issuing that report. And hence, in case if you don't want to be called by the regulators continuously, please ensure that you have clarity so that they understand your report in the first go and they do not interpret it in the wrong way. With that being said, accuracy, why accuracy is important, as you all know. I mean, accurate about the facts, because in case if one or two facts gets missed, the interpretation of the report is completely taken aback. So we need to ensure that the integrity of the report and there are no mistakes of error. Marginal errors are also, I personally don't feel that there should be a room for error in the forensic audit report, because even if one error or language interpretation also, it creates a lot of issues in the system. The last is, as many of you must have faced, write XYZ, write this and give. No, we are not supposed to write opinions. We are not supposed to pronounce anybody guilty. We are not supposed to say this party was there or not. We need to state only facts. And last but not the least, as the completeness, that whether the objectives are met, whether the demands of the reader has been met or not, and whether the scope coverage, whatever was requested by the stakeholder, has been completed or not. This 6 essentials of forensic audit report, if you take care of it, everything else will fall in place. Moving on to next one is the, as I said, structure, more or less structure in the suggestive format. What I've tried to do is, obviously there is no standard format in which the forensic audit report has to be written or so. But what we have done is, since I've been part of this industry for the past 10 years, and based on the experience, and so we have prepared a model which gives you a proper structure and all the characteristics of better report writing is there in place. So what I will do is, without wasting any time, I will move on to the structure and tell you where and how things can be presented appropriately. Structure of a forensic audit report. Typically, this is the structure at least I use in my forensic audit reports, where I focus on the first page, title page, table of contents, which is very important to give you the overview. The second part I usually keep is the executive summary. There are multiple readers of the report, and executive summary basically tells you in crux what the whole report comprises of. And many people, there are many higher ups who read the report and which may not have the time. So it's, as it is said, it is prepared for executive people, executive management. And that's the reason it summarizes the whole report in one. The third part, what I typically like to keep is limitation and disclaimers, which is, prior to reading the report, I want to highlight the reader that please take into consideration the limitations or the disclaimers which I have faced during while conducting the investigation or the forensic audit. The fourth is, need the background. How did this case come to you? What is the context? Why is it a whistleblower investigation? Is it a lender's investigation? Why typically are you investigating this case? And last is the objective. What's the objective which is binding you to do this investigation? The fifth one is scope of work. Scope of work is a guiding light, I believe, which talks about what exactly you need to achieve. For example, identify the modus operandi. That's the scope of work. Why do you need to achieve that? Identify that. For example, in lenders, I usually see that receivables identify overbilling, over subscribing. So why that is there in place? So that gives you complete guiding light of what are you supposed to identify, what are you supposed to investigate. And if you the report writing becomes very easy, and the investigation procedures also become very easy if you break and work according to the scope of work. That will also help the readers of the report, as well as the individual or the management or the regulators who have given you the assignment, as this is what they require, and that is what you need to fulfill. The sixth, which I typically like to keep, is data received. What is my approach and methodology? This is very important because there are different ways in which certain ways are forensic works. And what you need to clearly highlight is what I have received and what I've worked upon. So how I have been able to sort of come to certain relevant findings, or these are the procedures which I have followed, which helps the reader of the report to either say that, okay, this is sufficient enough procedures to come to this conclusion, that nothing else can be done, or in case if they have certain suggestions, they can provide you the same. The last one is the second last one is basically the detailed findings. Obviously, that is basically your fact finding report, where you try and whatever anomalies you have identified, you put it there. And the last one is glossary, annexures, and exhibits, where basically whatever you have identified or found out, that you would basically put up into annexures and the exhibits of the report and support them with the appropriated references. With that being said, I will take few minutes on each one of them in my next slides, so that we can get a better understanding, and I have given some certain examples also. That is the first page, and if you see, I have sort of given a sort of an example on the right side of how the title page looks like and what the table of contents look like in our reports. Why is the title important? Is it obviously informs the reader about what is to be expected. Important thing here is always on the title mention the thing which you want all the readers to look upon, all the readers of the report to identify and understand how the report has been made. It's here we have written simple that forensic report is subject to disclaimers and limitations in the relevant sections, but you can write anything which is of utmost importance for the reader to understand on how the report has been made. For example, certain times what we tend to do is critical, if you have not received the critical information of you, or you have received only half of the information, what you tend to do is you can put it on the face of the report itself, so that the reader first doesn't go into limitation disclaimer. The reader first looks at it and understands, okay, this report is based on the 40% of the work or the documentation provided to them, 60% of the documentation provided to them, certain this thing. Important, there are two things. One is the date. The date of the report is very important, as it will and that helps you to go over with the confusion in case multiple reports are being issued. Here, what we typically write is private and confidential, and privilege and confidential. Here you can also write only confidential. Private and confidential is meant for certain individuals. What we do is privilege and confidential we use for specific person, but there is no hard and fast. What we tend to do is, obviously all the forensic reports are confidential, and you only need to submit it to the person who has appointed you. That's how I understand it. I won't wait much time on table of contents. Table of contents just tell you the structure of the report and helps you locate the data quickly. So what just to add here is, in table of contents, whenever you write a report, try and give the link. I mean, in Word, you can easily do that. Give a link to executive summary so that a person can click on executive summary and directly go to that relevant page, so he doesn't have to flip through the pages. Moving on to the next one is executive summary. As I said, what is the objective of the executive summary is to just give a quick glance and the crux of the matter, and without driving much into the detail. As you know, as we rise up the ladder, we usually have a lesser time to manage a lot of things. But what happens is when we do a lot of investigations, what exactly is the outcome, whether this thing has happened or not. If usually three things are to be focused upon: whether there was something wrong, if wrong, how was it done, and what is the value or the quantum we are looking at. These three typically things should be there in your executive summary, which helps the reader determine the next steps to be taken during his other processes to be conducted. Moving on to next one is, as I said, limitation and disclaimers. Limitations basically is just the part saying that what stopped you from, what limited you from doing this investigation. Then there are multiple things. Okay, information not given is one thing. Maybe there may be multiple issues with regards to the individuals, the environment was hostile, or anything of that sort. So whatever constraints are there, you couldn't perform certain work procedures as there was a lockdown, the data was not available, etc., etc. So all that, what limits, so simply put, limitation means what things limited your work procedures, which you couldn't complete, or because of which the work procedures could not be completed. The second one is disclaimer. Disclaimers are a very important part, and I just a minute. I'll just have a, with that being said, limited disclaimers are very important, is because what I see they are missing in most of the reports. Why is it important is as it protects our scope of work, because there are many a times that certain scope of work written out there, people don't they that it is written in a very localized language or something, and in very raw form. So we need to ensure that when we do forensic audit and investigation, if there are certain things which we cannot be able to perform as due to our professional standards or the way it has to be done, we can definitely put that in disclaimers and protect ourselves. There are standards disclaimers, as one, two disclaimers I have highlighted here is the assessment arrived is not a legal opinion, and rightly so, because we are not lawyers. I mean, forensic auditors are not, I mean, whoever it may be, but we do not sign it as the lawyers. So we do not give legal opinions. This is whatever we write in our report is not legal. So that's how we need to ensure that our report as well as our scope of work is protected. Moving on to the next one is background, context, and objective. As I said, background is basically giving where did you get this engagement from, giving the background about the target company, giving the background about the client, giving the background why the client wants to initiate the investigation against the target or the suspected entities, etc. With the context and background, more or less, we cover on the same part, wherein we talk about the specific allegations in the context part, and where we try and discover that why is the fraud examination required in the first place. With that being said, objectives. So once you clearly write the objectives, three, four things as ascertain the merits, ascertain the modus operandi, identified who all were involved. So that will sort of clearly define the end goal and the use of the report. That's how the stakeholders defined it, and that's how they wanted 1, 2, 3 points where uh, where they want you to conduct the investigation. And typically whatever we write in the objective is that also gets covered in the executive summary, because that are the points where the stakeholders and the regulators are looking at. That is what they are looking at. Moving on to the next one, this we have basically sort of kept it from the lenders, money tail, end use of funds, diversion of funds, siphoning, capital structure contribution. So this is all typically, since anybody has done a forensic audit, they might relate to it, that this is usually where the bankers have that as a part of the scope of work. This scope of work gives you in detail the area they want to look at. So I mean, and I'm glad that whenever the banker gives an assignment, there are 21 line items in the scope of work where they specifically focus on, and where they specifically want a response, which is very good, and which helps the investigator in case if he just performs that activity, whatever is said, for example, money tail and end use of funds, they are sure to crack the case ASAP. Moving on to next one is with regards to data received, approach and methodology. Approach and methodology, and just think of it this way, that how do you start the investigation? How do you work it? And that's how you can put it the structure to it. For example, first you conduct discussions with the key representatives and gather the information. Then the second part is basically you do forensic data analytics procedures on it, where you try and identify the red flags. Once you've identified the red flags from the data and the procedures, the next step, what you do is you look at the supporting documentation. For example, you do not conclude the report as whenever just based on the forensic data analytical procedures. You check the supporting documentation and verify whatever the anomalies have been identified in the said procedures are corroborating while analyzing the documents also or not, and your interpretation is supporting that analysis or not. With that, the fourth last one is the digital evidence recovery, what we call it as email review or so. So this are all the documentation required and maintained, required by the company or the stakeholder or the target. But what evidence, what usually, and that's the best way to look at it, is these are all formalities when SAP data is there, supporting documentation like LR, invoice copy, etc. there. But behind the scenes, you will get to know the information only when you look at digital evidence recovery, which helps you sort of analyze, which helps you what was going on in the mind of the suspected parties or the targets while going or entering into this transaction. What was the background talks which are happening? These are basically the email discussions. The third last one is the public domain search, where we talk about what you identified about the suspected parties, which also includes the social media searches, where you can, if there is a whistleblower investigation or so, and just imagine there is an individual who is earning 10,000, and when you do social media searches, you get to know that he's roaming around in a BMW car or so. I'm just giving it an example. That kind of searches also help you sort of understand the mentality of the suspected parties and help you sort of create more evidence or help you get more evidence against the said individual. The second last is the market intelligence, where basically you do on the ground inquiries with the with regards to the subject and identify and corroborate that whatever we have identified from the public domain to what was stated in the report does that hold on the ground true or not. And the last one is having open discussions with the suspect, obviously with the help of the stakeholders and including all the legal guys and so, because we are better at sort of we know the evidences as we have gone through it, so we are better able to conduct the interviews. So asking them and inquiring that whether or not the suspected party was involved in such a kind of a transaction, and understanding from him or her that why was this transaction conducted in such an unusual way. This is the very important part as this helps the stakeholder to understand if everything in the hands of a forensic auditor, whatever he could do has been done, and based on that, the appropriate evidences has been gathered or not. The last is with all this hard work, whatever you do, as Arpit said, it is important that whatever you have done is being appropriately reported. It's a document which I just interpret it in this way. It is a document which reflects your hard work and it should be appropriately drafted. With regards to our findings and what I observed in is people out usually draft the findings as per their understanding, and what they do is they highlight the anomaly and leave it there. With a lot of experience and with lot of interaction with the regulators, uh, that has definitely improved my report writing skills, which has helped me sort of close the loop. I've learned that a lot. Whereas it's not only important to highlight a irregularities, or just bring out a fact saying that okay, there seems to be I mean the dates were not in the chronological order in the invoices, doesn't help. What you need to do is you need to go 2-3 steps further and ensure that whatever you are stating it as irregularities, you have checked all the protocols, all the trails in the place, and then you have sort of brought that out clearly. So only putting up irregularities doesn't help the stakeholders, doesn't help the regulators, doesn't help anybody else. What you need to do is close the loop, means basically why this transaction is irregular, why I put it across as 5 WHO questions, where why, how, what, when, where everything of that gets covered properly in the findings. This, if you keep this 5 questions in place, I'm sure your detailed findings would be absolutely amazing. The way it needs to be, what the way we do is we put it across as background. We give the background and the context of it, context of the transaction first, that to whom it was awarded, to how many amount, what was the amount, etc., etc. Then we talk about why it is unusual, why this kind of a transaction is unusual in the first place. Then basis that, what is the anomaly? That's basically the assessment. What is the anomaly? Usually it happens that management does sometimes require that we do take a response from the said individual person or the suspect, or in case if the banker has given the assessment, banker has given us the assignment, we usually go and ask the target entities also that why this kind of a transactions was interpreted. What I suggest in usually in responses from client or management is we need to keep it in verbatim. You don't need to sort of analyze or interpret it your accordingly and frame it. Whatever they have given, let it be there as it is in verbatim. What helps is the first 3 tabs, as you look at background, observation, and assessment, that helps you, uh, gives your point of view. The responses from management gives the other party's point of view. Let the regulator, let the lawyer, let the judges interpret it, and so the way they interpret, they whatever they want to take into consideration they can, and that's how we would like to close it. The final assessment here is basically either rewriting what you have assessed, is basically sometimes after the responses from the client or management, you can understand and you can get the more insights to it. So in case if your interpretation changes, or in case if your facts changes, you should obviously ensure that the correct facts and pictures are being presented. And hence we ensure that after all of this, there is a final assessment part where it clears out any misunderstanding, if any. The last one is the glossary, annexures, and exhibit. I won't spend much time here. You all know that it's basically the most critical part of the report, but always neglected. Very important one thing only which I would like to highlight here is annexures and exhibit, which are the supporting documentations for your report, and which I usually keep it in the end. Ensure that it is referenced properly to the main report, the detailed investigation and the detailed observation. As many a times what happens is they are not in sync, and the reader of the report loses interest in reading the report. So we do ensure that annexes and exhibit to the reports are kept in last, but appropriate references are being given, so that in case if the reader of the report wants to jump across the annexes or the exhibit, the other person can do it. So moving on, stages of the report, there are various stages. We typically tend to keep it into two: draft report and the final report. Draft report is usually issued, I mean, when it's pending investigation, or when there is an incomplete data set or so. Why I call it as a draft report is there are multiple times when the stakeholders require reporting at a regular intervals. You may have not completed the investigation, but whatever has been findings till date, they want it in sort of a document also, and hence we call it as a draft report. The final report is after taking into consideration everything, and so your assignment is complete. That's when the final report is issued, and where you can have discussions with the management, the lenders, and then only we issue a final report that gives a clarity, and all the understandings of the stakeholders have been captured appropriately in the report that needs to be ensured. Prior to that, don't please release the final report. Now coming on that side, I told you about the structure of the report. Now I'm coming on to the techniques of the how to write a effective report, and that I may have said it during our discussions today. Four to five things. One is reader's perspective. Look at everything from how a reader of the report. And one important thing is, in case if you are writing a report, please ensure that somebody else from the team or some other partner of your firm, somebody else look at it, just as a peer review. It is very important because a third person reviewing the report will identify multiple faults. You yourself writing a report and reading it, you may not be able to identify it. The other person's perspective of writing a lame, when you write a report in a language, the other person's perspective is very important, because that is how it is going to be interpreted by multiple stakeholders. So it is important that when you write a report, it's not only you who read the report, but it's there any other third party in your organization also reads the report and gives his thoughts. That is very important. The second one is organizing by transactions. Now, whenever I've looked at the reports, what we are talking here is about the structure and the logical flow. Okay, when there are identical findings, please club it together from the same area or something or the other. What helps is the reader of the report gets, when you read a book, if you read a book together, you will realize that many of the authors generally club all the findings or all the kind of a one kind of a story together that helps you to correlate, and hence all the transactions, in case if there are similar transaction, keep it in a one bucket or make it a sub bullet or so that it helps the reader of the report to go through it faster and interpret it faster. So he will take only certain minutes on the point one to read it, but all the last other points will be interpreted by him faster, and it will help him better. He will get interest in reading the report. The third one is the chronology. It is very important to represent the report and the facts in a sequential order, as it helps develop from each stage the case has been progressed. Is very important, as you all will understand. I mean, you will not go from 10 to 1, you will always go from 1 to 10. So you have a better flow and you have a better flow of understanding. Last and the most important part of it is evidence. Evidence in your report has no value at all if there is no evidence attached in the report, or whatever you say in the report has uh, is without any evidence. Please do not state your interpretation. Please do not state your thought processes. This is forensic audit report. It's not an essay. You are just supposed to, whatever facts you have identified, write that down, and the facts need to be corroborated with the evidence. What you're saying is appropriately there as a evidence in the annexure or exhibit or not. So that's the critical part of it. If there lacks evidence, for example, you've discussed this with one of the investigations. You discussed XYZ with ABC, this thing, ABC guy, individual, and you write that in the report. It is not going to hold an evidential value at all. What you need to do is, as an evidence, if you have certain discussions, you document that discussions, mark a copy to him, email it to him, tell him to confirm that whether we had a discussions on this or not, and then put that as a document in the report. That will hold a little bit of an evidence value. But if you just write that based on my discussion with XYZ, this is what I interpreted, no, it's not going to help you at all. With that, what we usually do is visual aids, and by that I will give you certain examples. For example, visual aids are basically fund flow diagram, easy to interpret. What we are trying to do here is, report is a complex thing. We are trying to make it simplified version. I mean, to the extent possible. I'm sure that you don't need to simplify it to a lot of extent, but it should not be become an issue for the reader in the first place. So if you see here, I have drawn a fund flow diagram. You can typically present it in a simple way, which helps you say that, okay, the transaction way it has flown is ABC to XYZ, XYZ to BRB, and then BRB gave it to the subsidiary, and then it has moved it back. That's how this whole transaction has occurred. And this you can usually this you can present it prior to every finding. This will enhance the report. This will enhance your understanding of the way you write your observations. Also, the reader of the report will not have to go through a lot of language which you have written in the report. Looking at this visual aid, the person can easily understand that what actually has happened. Moving on to the next one is one more example of the timeline is, if you see from 2010 to 2020, one ABC Private Limited, how it has gone from getting a private equity investments, multiple investments, then got a net asset losses, and then how it got into the insolvency process. So this whole trail you can show. So from that, you will get a clear trail of what this company has gone through. It is important that you write important dates, important activity. This does really help judges and other stakeholders, executive stakeholders, to look at what exactly had happened during the lifetime of the company. One more way to present is diagrams wherein basically the hierarchy is been presented, where MD to CEO to how the flow of the organization structure or the process protocol was there in place. This helps you to connect the dot of, if for example Yash was involved, so obviously the next question goes to whether Ram Desai and Tina Dixit were also involved or not. This helps you to raise questions and then close the complete loop. With that being said, let me just come to the last part of it, which is summary. And what I've spoken about is I've tried to capture it in do's and don'ts, and which is also covered in the exposure draft. I won't spend much time here You guys must have read it, but just to keep a key highlights to it, everything of that is covered. Everything of what I spoke has been covered into these 4 buckets. One is introduction, scope of work, objective, report requirement, and documentation. Few parts where I would requirements of the report. If you look at it, issue the report, a formal report with the conveyed result clearly and accurately, whom the report is to, whom the report is been addressed to, our limitations and assumptions, forms and the contents, facts are to be presented, executive summary needs to be that, and the reporting timelines in a reasonable time frame are been issued. In case if the interim reports have been issued, they are also been issued time or as per timelines. If you look at the documentation procedures, you will see the last one, second one is with regards to detailed working paper and key evidences. Please understand, anybody who's doing forensic audit or doing any investigation, evidence is a key. And evidence, how you put that across in a report, will enhance the report quality as well as help you sort of ensure that whatever work you have done comes out appropriately. Do's and don'ts, these are typical do's and don'ts which have been missed by many of them. They are simple points. For example, grammar, punctuation needs to be there, proofread needs to be done. But many a times what we are seeing is what we do is this, we have kept it as a checklist. What happens is when we go, once we are done with the report, we ensure that okay, grammar is done, punctuation is done, whether we proofread whether has anybody proofread it, whether if it is draft report, whether it is coming in on the all pages or not, whether charts and graphs are appropriately represented or not, whether all the last thing, very important thing we do is each and every observation we cross reference it with the evidences and see again the evidences in the end and see whatever we have stated, whatever the facts we have stated in our report is done, is written properly or not. The don'ts of it is basically don't glorify our findings. I mean, everybody in this world is not great as an English speaker or English reader. Don't use jargons. Please understand there are multiple people reading the reports. So write reports as much as simple and factual, which is correct. Don't keep the reader, don't write too long reports because it becomes exhaustive before reaching the critical points and then they lose the interest. Don't put personal comments and speculation. Don't use different tables, formats, color schemes, etc. Please understand, you are writing a report, you are not making a presentation or not glorifying something. So please keep it simple. People will understand. You don't need to do bold, highlight different colors and etc, which makes the reader of the report very difficult to read. And please ensure, the last but not the least is, please do spell check. It is very important part of report writing. If there are too many grammatical mistakes while any document is being presented, it irritates the reporter. With that being said, this is where I end. I'm happy to take if there are any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Rushabh. Thank you. We've got some questions. Let's quickly take them before we could start off with our, because we've the panelists also have joined us.
Yes.
Any special considerations while reporting the confessions from the fraudster? So Smith Data has asked that question. From fraudsters or confessions.
So as I said, we are not lawyers. Let's not, we don't write confessions or so. Let it be in the realm of the regulatory authority. I mean, even if he gives a statement to you, there can be multiple times where he can deny that you have given, you have pressurized me to give that or so. So there needs to be appropriate, just hold on, just give me a moment. I will. Okay, so there needs to be the confession needs to be by the legal guy in the room. they need to be a part of it, and the legal team of your company or legal team of the client needs to take care of this. So let them handle it. It will not, you will not be able to, even if you record a confession, many a times that has been not been accepted by, I mean, EOW or any police officials. So please take that into consideration.
Right. Santosh ji asked, how safe is it to send report to respective authority without password protection, considering technology threat? I mean, I don't know
No.
how to extend is that really a concern, but then how is it interpreted in court of law? I don't know.
No, I mean, just to simply put it across, I mean, it's a complex question what you ask for. Simply put it across, please have a password protection in place while sending across the report. And ensure what happens is many a times email goes to a lot of emails are being looked at by multiple people, by the secretaries of the executive management also. So please ensure that whenever you send a report, it is password protected. Talk to them and then give them a password or so, that at least that care you can take care prior to safeguarding your kind of a report.
And more importantly, you send it to a common ID of a bank, say a branch, any branch, and then when you send it to that common ID, it is accessed by so many other people also.
Yes.
And you never know what can and where it can go. So right, that's a good insight. Actually, we should always send it password protected and give the password only to those relevant people. Oh, great. Any more questions? If anyone would have. What if size is more? Well, you break
Sir,
it.
compress it. Zip, WinZip hai, Z7 hai. There are multiple software where you can compress the report.
Wonderful, wonderful. I think very well set up. The mood and the entire context for having a wonderful panel discussion up next. I think so many relevant aspects that we've covered while report writing. In fact, it's a very, very exhaustive, crisp presentation, Rushabh, that you've created for us. Thank you. My colleague Rajesh Agarwal, if you're there, may I request Rajesh bhai? Welcome.
Thank you, sir.
May I request you to please let's close this session with a word of thanks to Rushabh, and then we begin with the next panel discussion also. Over to you, Rajesh bhai.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thanks a lot, Arpit bhai. Good evening, friends. It is my honor to thank Rushabh Bhatt, CA Rushabh Bhatt, faculty of the session, for sparing his valuable time and sharing his key insights about the essentials of reporting. I am on behalf of WIRC and all my participants. Thank him. Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rushabh. Moving on next. Look who we have on this panel. I think it's a privilege for all of us that we share the same screen. May I invite CA Sanjeev Maheshwari ji, the past chairman of WIRC and also non-official executive director at SBI. We have CA JP Ratho ji, the global head at Yes Bank, internal audit head at Yes Bank. And we have Harshit Baxi ji, one another stalwart as a global head, risk internal audit head. So if you can switch on your camera and join us on screen.
Thanks. I have my camera on, but I don't know if it's visible. It will asking for some administrative control.
Okay.
So someone can check from that side.
I think that's a risk issue, sir, an internal audit issue.
Technology risk which you all are facing.
That's going to be taken care by some other expert, I think. But we welcome you, sir. And with these three stalwarts, with these three wonderful personalities today, we're gonna have this entire session would be moderated by a very, very apt and a very able personality again, a CA Hardik Chokshi, someone who comes from very strong experience of conducting these forensics, risk advisory, and a lot of bank related engagements. We welcome you, Hardik bhai, moderator for this session. May I request my friend Rajesh to please introduce the moderator who can then start off the session and introduce all the panelists one by one for the participants. Over to you, Rajesh bhai. Rajesh bhai, you're on mute, sir.
I would like to have the privilege to introduce the panelist, CA Hardik Chokshi sir, our panelist of the session, who is currently partner at Chokshi and Chokshi, chartered accountant, renowned chartered accountancy firm. He is a partner since 2003. He is specialized in risk and information technology, forensic, digital transformation, business valuation, with over 17 years of diversified experience in various sectors, and has been instrumental in setting up the forensic services in his office. His recent engagement includes investigation of a mutual fund, handling of infamous Bollywood drug case matter, assessing fair value of IPL cricket teams, and he has worked on behalf of the investigation agencies like Enforcement Directorate, Narcotics Control Bureau, and CBI. He has co-authored book Practitioner's Guide to Audit of Small Entities 2019 edition and Internal Audit of Mutual Funds for the ICAI, and book on non-banking financial companies for Bombay Chartered Accountants Society. He has also, on behalf of the ICAI and other professional body, presented papers and video sessions on topics like bank LFAR, forensics, valuation, due diligence, internal audit, and NBFC. With this brief introduction, I request sir to continue.
Thank you, Rajesh bhai. Amazing. Thank you, Rajesh bhai, for introducing our moderator for us. And we welcome each one of you today at WIRC, sir. Thank you for spending out time and coming here to create this wonderful session for all of us. To all of you, let me just update you that we've had a 5-day series of refresher course. This is the 4th day, and we have discussed various nuances, right from anti-corruption bureau to intelligence to narcotics to SFIOs to EOWs to almost every other things. And today we are here discussing about expectations of stakeholders and pricing and all of these little nuances for forensics. Hardik bhai, over to you, please. Hardik bhai, you're on mute. Sorry. Also, Mishra ji or Vaibhav, please help Harshit Baxi sir to ensure that his video is. Please do that, please. Hardik bhai, over to you.
Thank you, Arpit bhai. Thank you, Rajesh bhai, for the very kind introduction. Thank you, all members. I mean, I'm privileged and honored to be on the platform of the WIRC of this series, which has been very successfully been launched by the WIRC of the ICAI. I welcome you all on the subject of nuances of reporting, meeting expectations of stakeholders, and need for pricing in right. Friends, today we also have with us a very eminent panel with us, CA Sanjeev by Maheshwari, CA JP Ratho, and Mr. Harshit Baxi. Before I introduce the panel, I would like to say something, that we have learned a lot over the last 3 days. And what is the most important takeaway from all this learning? That yes, a good forensic auditor needs to just not have good accounting and investigation skills, but he also has to have very strong report drafting skills, because finally that is like your end product, your output, which is being presented, and it has to pass through various layers of tests through your stakeholders, through the investigating agencies, through the to the legal systems also. So again, having a very good report is very critical and very imperative whenever we are releasing a forensic audit. Today also is a very interesting day. Today the government has notified multidisciplinary partnership firms. With this little modification, the CA firms are now allowed to have partnerships with members of other professions. Friends, I believe this will also be a little change, a game changer when it will come to the practice of forensics, if I can relate to that. Of course, we have with us Sanjeev Maheshwari, who will be able to provide some insights also from this particular change and how it could have the effect on the forensic practices. I would like to take this opportunity to introduce our three eminent panelists. CA Sanjeev Maheshwari, he is a chartered accountant and a DISA and qualified in the year 1985 and was on the merit list of the CA final examinations. He is a managing partner in Messrs. GMJ and Company Chartered Accountants. Sanjeev Bhai has been as a member of the Central Council of the Institute of Chartered Accountants for the period 2007 to 2016 and has been on various committees, very prominent among them being the chairman of the Accounting Standard Boards of the ICAI for the period 2013 to 2016. During this period, Sanjeev Bhai has been instrumental in formulating the India's accounting standards and has played a very important role to the profession for rolling out these standards. Sanjeev Bhai has also been a member of the Quality Review Board constituted by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs and has been a member on various committees of the South Asian Federation of Accountants, SAFA as we call it as. He was earlier the chairman of the Western India Regional Council of the ICAI. Sanjeev Bhai has also presented many papers on accounting standards and audits related subjects at various seminars of the ICAI, WIRC, its branches and study circles. Sanjeev Bhai is currently a non-executive director at the State Bank of India. Thank you, Sanjeev Bhai. On behalf of the WIRC, we welcome you. We have our next panelist, CA Jyoti Prasad Ratho. He is a chartered accountant with over 30 plus years of post-qualification experiences in internal audit, accountancy, business process re-engineering, application systems, security management services, infrastructure management services, and equity research. He has been with the banking industry in India and abroad for more than 25 years and is currently the head of internal audit at Yes Bank. Thank you, JP Rathoji, for coming on the panel on behalf of the WIRC. Our third eminent panelist, Mr. Harshit Baxi. He is a global head at the Internal Audit and Risk Management First Source Solutions Limited in Mumbai. Harshit is a seasoned audit, risk and compliance professional with over 2 decades of experiences spanning over banking, insurance and the BPM industry verticals. In his current role, he is responsible for driving internal audit and enterprise risk management functions globally across India, US, UK, Philippines, and various other geographies. Prior to this, he has also held various leadership roles as a chief risk officer, chief audit executive with the Citigroups, the Barclays, the Tata AIG, and the Mizuho banks. While working closely with the boards, risk audit committees, executive management and regulators, he has successfully set up and optimized the enterprise risk audit and compliance functions in a global environment and contributed towards building sustainable governance practices. Harshit is inside discovery practitioner and passionately engages in mentoring and leadership development programs, something of course which is very eminent requirement of today's times, mentoring. He visits academic institutions of eminence like IIM Ahmedabad, SPJ in Mumbai, NBI Nepal, Amity universities and other institutes as industry expert guest, faculty and also a regular speaker in various industry forums like the IIA, ICAI, GRC conferences. Thank you, Mr. Harshit. We welcome you on behalf of the ICAI, WIRC of ICAI. Friends, today is a Friday evening, and of course, when I spoke to Harshit, Arpit, I told him that, we need to keep it very light, because, 3 sessions of hard learning, and today also, I think it's good that it will be very good that our audiences get a flavor of having a very light Friday evening. We do not want to have a lot of heavy discussions today, but of course, we will be definitely putting a lot of heavy questions to our panelists. I've got this opportunity today because normally my wife keeps on asking me a lot of questions. And now I've got an opportunity to be on the other side and of course grill these panelists who are really very good and very strong and very tough to crack. So my questions will be very tough to them, and I'm sure we'll be expecting a lot of strong and good replies, which would help our members a lot in this subject of nuances of reporting and pricing it right. I would like to take through the questions in a manner that we'll first give the questions to every panelist, and every panelist can give their views. And of course, if anybody wants to give some additional views during the discussion, please feel free to do so. We will also follow a quick chats with our audience members who may probably want to have some questions for yourself, sir. So my first question, and I would like to start with Sanjeev Bhai Maheshwari. Just if you could just share us some experiences of yours with in investigation with the auditors. You have been a part of the fraternity also, and on the other side also as a director and the bank. So, sir, if you could give us some little experiences here.
Thank you, Hardik. Thank you for, first of all, inviting me here. And thanks to Arpit, and good to see Rajesh and as well as Rekha from the Pune team. And good to see all my other colleagues on the panel here. First of all, of course, statutory disclaimer that all views that I express herein are my personal views and not that of a bank. I think that is important, that it needs to be in the right perspective. And I think this question should really go to Harshit more than me and anybody else, I would think that. But nevertheless, I think that there has been a lot of experience which I think all the participants here would have of having looked at different kind of challenges that we would have looked in terms of the forensic audits or in terms of the cases that you would have seen, very challenging kind of cases. But I find that underlying, there are two elements which, be it in times of the term loan disbursements or the diversion of working capital, if I have to classify this into two categories. And I think most of us as chartered accountants do understand where things go wrong. And we see probably the names keep on changing, but the stories remain the same. You will find the same kind of things which actually keep on happening over a period of time. It's only different geography, different entity, different structure. But I think when you are asking me for something specific, I think one of the case that I think has found my attention is a case where actually at the point of time the term loans, etc., were disbursed somewhere around 2013-14. And at that point of time, a complete due diligence, TV study, and everything has been done. And then thereafter, the accounts were actually, the funds were disbursed. The equipments were imported from Singapore and from some other countries. And I think everything was going through smoothly until actually a couple of years back when the account started slipping. And that's when the forensic audit report was carried out. And I think prima facie, everybody in the system was feeling that everything is appropriate because that nothing seemed to be inappropriate. But the forensic auditors actually carried out an exercise and came up with some startling facts, such as that when the original equipments were imported, okay, the monies were, the TV study was done, the money was released in tranches, but the equipment that was all imported were not from the manufacturer or the suppliers. They were all from traders. And then subsequently, with the benefit of hindsight, those entities were just created a couple of months prior to the purchase orders being given. And then thereafter, after the orders were executed, after a year or so, probably all these entities have been closed. So now in 2020-21, you are aware that these entities have closed. Of course, you had the benefit of hindsight. But that is where the forensic auditor was able to bring across very clearly in terms of a clarity that the entire case was over-invoicing of right from day one. The money had been brought back to India by some other routes, and the account was then thereafter actually classified as fraud. So I thought that these were some of the cases. There are many such cases, but where you found that the forensic auditor, if it actually gets down to a serious business, is able to identify and locate the true causes of the account going bad, and probably helps the lenders in accomplishing things better, because once it is identified that the account is fraud, and if there is, so then the lender is also in a better position to negotiate and handle the particular case. So I would leave it at this, and maybe maybe we'll have more some other thoughts around this. Thanks.
Thanks, Sanjeev bhai, very well put out. JP, if you could share, you've been working with a lot of auditors, day in, day out as a part of your internal audit functions also, and various risk management and fraud risk assessments that you keep on doing at the bank. So could you share some experience of investigation with the auditors, and some 3 things that you will look for in a forensic investigating auditor?
So thank you for the opportunity, WIRC, and Hardik bhai, thank you for having me in the panel per se. So it's a pleasure. And as let me echo Sanjeev bhai's yes also that look, the views expressed are obviously my own and not the organization that I work for. So having said that, obviously, I mean, we keep seeing a lot of forensic audit reports. And what, as a banker, what we are trying to look at is that, are these reports conclusive enough for us to take action on? And are these reports sufficiently structured so that as and when we are able to detect a fraud or conclude that this is a fraud, when we go to the authorities for filing the fraud reports, etc., do we have sufficient evidence to take this forward? No, so that is something which perhaps we have been we have been finding that it has not been very the experience has not been very great. I'm sorry if I'm being fairly open on this, but that's one issue that perhaps we need to be very conversant about, and that's something that perhaps we should be looking at very conveniently and very. So the language that is put into the report, the supportings that are given in the findings or the report. The third thing that perhaps I could highlight is the fact that when we talk of sharing of the report, now there's a possibility that there is a draft report, there could be multiple drafts, and then finally there is a final report. Now these reports could contain details which are damaging to the borrower, or it could be to the lender also. So we need to ensure that the privacy of the reports are sufficiently maintained across, and that in case there is a leak, we are able to sufficiently trace as to which particular report is getting traced out or is getting leaked out. So these are a couple of things which perhaps I needed to highlight. And so Hardik bhai, if you could, and I'm sure as we progress, we will have more and more such conversations, and then we can take it forward per se.
Sure.
Thank you, Hardik.
Harshit, your views on this?
Yeah, no, first of all, thanks Hardik bhai, thanks Arpit and entire WIS team and my eminent co-panelist, right? I think from a practitioner, industry practitioner's perspective, it's still in a native stage in terms of, from an organization point of view, or even from board point of view, directly dealing with the forensic auditor, right? Now, a couple of practical dilemma or practical issues which we are facing from an industry perspective is that, you already have a various governance mechanism, right? In terms of when you have your statutory auditors, your internal auditors, your own in-house investigator team. Now, what exactly is the value, which is the unique selling proposition which forensic auditor is bringing in, right? In order to help my specific pinpoint at solving the problem. So I think that's somewhere, lots of clarity is needed. And from a forensic auditor's help perspective, that, while all these governance mechanism will continue to exist, what exactly the focus approach and the fact-finding exercise which organization is looking into, where I can really be helpful in terms of, getting them the crystal clear objective dimension supported with the full evidence and the fact. Is that what the clarity? So sometimes from an improvement opportunity perspective, I am saying that's an area which need to be very clearly defined between both the party and the forensic auditor need to be very focused in terms of delivering the result around that specific aspect. Now, second thing which I am seeing is something which will evolve again as we move further in the discussion. That, one is a forensic auditor, whatever report and outcome which has been presented to your organization. Obviously, it is with the full of your data, of your analysis, with the lots of evidence. So there's a lot of plethora of information, right? What eventually your stakeholder is expecting and needing is a perfectly precise kind of summary form in terms of and how you sum up the entire kind of an exercise. And that's where I passionately kind of, and also whenever we interact with the forensic auditors, saying, by fundamental nature of that activity, people are driven by hardcore data, science, technology, right? But there is an element of art, right? And that's what I'm saying, also forensic editor need to learn that art of storytelling, right? Which is very simple, the entire exercise which has been done, how beautifully, but in an absolutely succinct and appealing manner, you are able to, in a shortest possible time with the fundamental accurate and the fact that messaging, you are able to put it across and convince your stakeholder, look, this is exactly the outcome. So I think just to begin and set the tone of the entire discussion, those are the two things which I would see is really, I am seeing a key differentiator, which one can really have a fantastic experience coming out of forensic auditors.
Very well said, Harshit. I mean, of course, forensic audit, there is a skill of report writing, which Rushabh also spoke about in the earlier session, and, of course, it's a fact-finding report. Now, in today's times, see, auditors are also faced with a lot of challenges, and they have certain inherent limitations. At times, a lot is expected from the auditing fraternity, but, and the auditors are very passionate on the ground. But sometimes due to probably data limitations or due to getting limited access of informations, the auditor's reports may sometimes probably not be completely conclusive in nature. So Sanjeev, so you have been, also a resolution professional in the past, and you're also doing currently. I'm sure you would be coming across, your fraternity members here that, where they face some challenges here. How do you deal with the report is not conclusive as a resolution professional, if I can put it?
So Hardik, I think, the way my experiences around this subject has been that, if you look at some of the forensic audit reports which are being conducted in IBC or beyond IBC. Now, when the things are not being conducted, when a forensic audit is not being conducted under IBC and it is being conducted outside IBC, the expectations were always that the management has the information, but is probably wanting to always hold back the information. And it becomes very imperative, and the persuasive power of the auditor also becomes important. How persuasive is he in terms of trying to extract the information. And under IBC, I think I have seen two different kind of experiences that I have. One is as far as large entities are concerned, where the RPs have been able to get complete control factually in terms of those entities where the promoters have actually been out and the employees are actually reporting to RPs. And whatever be the law, the fact remains that it doesn't happen universally in all cases under IBC. Some of the larger cases it happens, but in many of the other cases it does not happen. The RP, though in being in power, does not really get complete control of the information flow that is required. And under these circumstances under IBC, if a RP has been able to extract or get hold of the information, because many times this information are in softwares which are not really easily accessible or available, and there are challenges around that for the auditor to get information. And the forensic auditor also has some time limitations, also the pressure of time limitation also. So the easiest way which every auditor also looks at is in terms of, okay, that these are the list of limitations and these are the list of disclaimers that I give it, and possibly, still conclude my report because the lenders are wanting to have some kind of a report. Everything is bound by timeline. But I think in this kind of a backdrop, what is imperative for all of us to know is that RP needs to put in, or a forensic auditor needs to put in his best efforts in trying to extract information and also submit the report. Now, it does happen that you may not be in a position to get complete excess of information the way you are ideally wanting it to be. But I think the kind of reports that we have seen all over in our fraternity is that still, even if the complete information has not been made available, there has been sufficiently corroborative evidence which is actually generated by the forensic auditor, which actually helps the lender in making up its mind that whether this information is sufficient for us to consider it as a fraud or it is not a fraud. But I think the tendency that as auditors, many of us are developing is actually a list of limitations run into a few pages. I think we need to revisit that and probably actually ensure that end of the day, our report becomes a utility item for the lenders to take a decision, because there have been few cases where the lenders have gone in for a second round of forensic. And when it goes into a second round of forensic, and then they've been able to get the information from the borrower in various circumstances, different cases, different propositions and different backgrounds have been there. But the fact has been that a first forensic report has been given, which was completely inconclusive. The lenders came to the conclusion that there needs to be another auditor, or more inflow of information has to be there. The promoters have given the information, and then you come to a moment. So I wouldn't say, if I was to conclude that, I wouldn't say that there is a single point by which we can say, this is the only way of working. But I think we need to move in a direction where, as auditors, if we are able to have clarity of thoughts, that we have put in our best efforts. After that, if we have sufficient corroborative evidence which can help a lender to take some kind of a decision, put that on paper, and obviously there will have to be a timeline to it. And I believe that the lenders also understand this position, that you have put in your best efforts, and you have put in the best efforts. Now, of course, there is always this challenge also, that whether the auditor has to be conclusive or whether the lender is going to take the final decision. I think that is another area that leaves a lot of room for discussion. So
of course,
that's where I would leave it.
Very well said, Sanjeev bhai. There is a little challenge on the ground where for lenders also are not able to at times take a view on the report, and then they are going for a second round of a forensic. But just to add up to that, let's say a company is going for a second round of forensic report. How would you, as a resolution professional, just try to look at it? I mean, would you recommend the lender, the COC, to look at a second round of forensics, and finally, how do you end this? Where does a logical end to this?
So as I said, in fact, I actually had taken up both the kind of cases, the one which were under IBC and one which were not under IBC. So there have been different kind of experiences. But under IBC, of course, you're looking at from the perspective of those four sections, and you need to have a time-bound results. Now, what happens is, as I was saying, that in most of the small or the medium RP cases that I would say, which are there in this segment, the flow of information to the RP himself is very limited. Because he does not have access to the proper access to the software and the complete information, in spite of the fact that you are on paper, the board powers has been suspended, etc., etc. And that's where the challenge is, that when you don't have a complete information, there are limitations with the forensic auditor also of being in a position to conclude and give a conclusive evidence. So I would say that you will have to balance. If you think as an RP, you have to do a balance between the information that is available, the list of disclaimers which are there, are they so material, or there are some elements, what is the kind of weightage that you need to do. Basis that you will need to formulate your opinion. I wouldn't really like to say that, only one line of action would suffice in all cases.
Okay. JP, your views on this? I mean, you're on mute, JP.
Sorry, I would largely echo Sanjeev bhai. So typically what we'll anyway have to look at is, there are cases which are inconclusive. I am fully with Sanjeev bhai to say that yes, there are challenges which the auditor faces when he goes out onto the field. Maybe the information is not available, and consequently it could be a challenge for the auditor to report it. And hence the number of qualifications that come in, or the number of years that come in. So having said that, perhaps what we need to look at is, when an auditor comes out with a report, to what extent are we looking at it? My experience has been on the other side of the table, is that we have looked at a lot of audit reports which have talked about controls, etc., which is more from an internal audit perspective rather than a forensic audit perspective. So when you do a forensic audit, your charter is very clearly laid out. Whatever is the expectation is that we need to figure out whether there is a fraud, yes or a no. Maybe the yes or a no is very difficult to pinpoint at most times. And hence the caveats come into these reports, fully appreciated. I mean, when I stand in the middle, being on both sides of the table as a member of the profession as well as a banker, then one needs to balance it, no two ways about it. What happens is, in case the reporting is succinct enough with corroborative evidence, and maybe corroborative evidence in addition, maybe if it is written well enough with the flow of data available, it may be possible for the lender to take a call without the auditor having closed or having concluded on the findings per se. But at least what should be done is that at times the auditor has to deal with a humongous amount of data. So the auditor should not get lost in the data that is there. He should find his way out and keep his objective very, very clear. That look, the objective is to figure out whether there is divergence, if I may use an example, whether there is any other element of fraud per se that is there. So that is where we need to figure out. And if the data is not available, then yes, as long as the transactions basis is available, a corroborative evidence is available, the flow is clear, I think the lenders can then take a succinct view as to which way to lean on. And ideally, one should avoid giving a very disclaimer kind of a report, because then it so happens that it is possible, and very rarely so, that the lender has to go in for another round of audit. That is something that I think one should avoid. And that is where the skills of the auditor come into play, and how he extracts data both from internal, external, as well as through the other means of gathering information that he is able to present a report on. So, so in conclusion, what I would say is the way you report what is the work that you've done, how you have put it out is extremely important. While you might not have concluded, while the data might not have been total, but at least there could be some elements on the basis of which a judgment could be exercised by the lenders. That's very important.
Fair point. I mean, naturally, the report has to be of utility. At the same time, some kind of balancing is always required by the auditors. Absolutely. Also with the the environment that the auditor also works within. So Harshit bhai, your views on reports which are inconclusive.
Yeah. No, I think very valid point is made by both Ratho ji and Sanjeev ji. I think two side of the story which I like to put it across. One is, let's start fundamentally with the acceptance that by virtue of nature of audit as a profession, right? Availability of data, timeliness, quality and comprehensiveness of the data is always a limitation which one need to deal with, right? So there is no point I would expect that at some point of time, out of the two scenario, basis if you are genuinely having a limitation on the data, right? And you are not able to kind of get the timely or accurate or comprehensive data, then exercising the choice of basically putting a stop and making it as an inconclusive from an auditor's perspective. But if you just take it to the one next step level with the help of a lot of other corroborative information, as well as now with the help of a lot of technology solution, basis the available set of data, which may be not fully as you wanted, you can use a predictive analysis. You can build a kind of an hypothesis based scenario analysis, right? Which at least gives a relatively much more universal based comprehensive picture to your client and to the enterprise in terms of making even little more comprehensive or more informed decision, which is more of a scenario based, right? So that's a choice which I would say over a period of time, particularly, and I'm seeing the trend that forensic auditor will start kind of exercising in between, like putting a full stop basis available data and making it as a more of an inconclusive, if you can kind of take it more as a with the full kind of a knowledge. Second side, from a client perspective or from an enterprise perspective, finally it's an ownership issue, right? You are basically getting and engaging and help from an expert people who obviously have some limitation, but at the end of the day, the ownership to take a informed decision based on the available information, right, which is obviously on the best effort basis, still remains with you. So I think as an approach, leaving that ownership back to the auditor and saying that the fact that auditor has declared that is an inconclusive, let me continue to ride on that. Rather, I think I would say the owners need to kind of, be ready to take that one extra risk in terms of taking still a well-informed decision basis, all information available. So I think that two-way approach will eventually help us to kind of break the jinx of something which has been put it across as an inconclusive.
Very well said. I think the owners of the report, the stakeholders also need to take some views on the report, considering the information which the auditor has given to them. End of the day, the owners of the report have to also independently evaluate the auditor's report. So, Sanjeev bhai, you're on mute.
Yeah.
So, So, Sanjeev bhai, again, we are well aware that, there have been no forensic standards, and, this is an emerging area of practice. naturally, in absence of, now that the forensic standards are there, and of course they would be notified shortly. Your thought process, on, where, because the auditor has to, naturally be aware of the future consequences. He may have to probably go and represent in the court, represent to the investigating agencies. There are some data challenges. Again, every audit has its, in general, any audit has an inherent challenge, irrespective of it being an internal audit or a forensic audit, despite enhanced audit procedures. I mean, your thought process on the disclaimers, which the auditor needs to, consider, and in the report, and of course it's a fact-finding report, but again, there will always be some challenges, and the auditor would like to bring it out where to the reader of the report, sir.
So, Hardik, my thoughts around this are that, that of course these are also things on the literature part or the technical part, guidance from the institute. These are things which are evolving and probably will have a more structured way of, the entire profession being on the same page, the same set of principles being applicable, and the same, and there would be somebody who will regulate us on from that perspective. And it definitely takes in some element of time. When the accounting standards had come in, even then it took some time. Internal audit standards came in, then also it was a little difficult for members to adjust to this, because especially when this work was also being carried out by non-chartered accountants. And I think so is the case going to be with this element also, that when the forensic standards are coming in, it will take us some time for us to settle down in terms of the exact understanding, the implementation, and to mold ourselves to fit within the expectations of the ICAI. But I think that is one part. The regulation is one part of it. But I think end of the day, for beat any work, I think what is important is that the value creation has to be there from the stakeholders' perspective. And end of the day, if there are going to be too many disclaimers or too many inconclusive reports or too many elements where the stakeholder finds that the forensic audit is not really serving a meaningful purpose except for a compliance part of it. There are two elements to it. One is a compliance, one is a value addition. I think for any profession to survive or any activity to survive, end of the day, it's not regulation, it's a value addition which will be there. And I think from that perspective, if our profession thinks that, or responds to the needs of the stakeholders in terms of creating value, in addition to the regulatory compliance, I think that is where we'll see a greater growth and structure in this activity.
Okay. JP, your thoughts on disclaimers in the reports, and I mean, you are from both sides. I mean, you're on the, so JP on mute.
So that makes it tougher to answer, because whose side do I take now, right? as a part of the profession, yes, I think it is imperative that we need to put in disclaimers as depending on what is the data, what is the comprehensiveness of the data that is available to us. And if I were to look at it from the client's end, then obviously the client has an expectation. So matching that is very, very important. And definitely standards which ICAI could set or would come up with finally and notify them, I think it'll serve as a good guidance so that both the client as well as the auditor are aware as to what to expect, so that there is no disconnect there. And there is a broad guidance, because today forensic audit, maybe there is a method to the madness, pardon me for saying madness, there is a method that is followed, but yes, there is no professional guidance that is available within the country today. And hence, yes, it will definitely go a long way in giving assurances to both sides, like this is what needs to be followed.
Correct.
So the client knows what to expect and the auditor knows what can be delivered.
Correct.
And hence the disclaimers become more imperative at that point of time.
No, absolutely. Very well said, JP. I mean, of course, disclaimers are imperative, but of course, with the forensic standards, there would be some, middle part somewhere that for the auditors and the stakeholders, to come to a, term of the nature and level of disclaimers in the reports. So, of course, the ICAI has done the right way of, having these forensic standards, and once notified, a lot of things will improve. Harshit, your views here?
Yeah, no, I think from a practitioner's perspective, I mean, two things. As our friends have said, the standards are definitely going to be very, very helpful also in terms of creating a common language and common understanding and common expectation with respect to disclaimers as well. Now, my practical experience with respect to a disclaimer is that, if you are good at the very starting point in terms of, and if you have absolutely robust understanding with respect to scope and expectation, I think the disclaimer is make the thing very, very easy, right? I am seeing that use of disclaimer more as a protective measure by a kind of, more on a liability side from a forensic auditor that arises primarily when there is an expectation or scope understanding mismatch, right? So eventually, I think practical experience is that, at the scope finalization and understanding the kind of clarity of what are expectations, if as an auditor you clearly understand that what exactly the end use of my work is going to be, is it something which is needed to just support my kind of an internal decisioning, is that my outcome is expected by my client to be used in a court of a law, it is something which is needed, which is going to be used in something in a cross-border context. According to that, then if you kind of work and whatever genuine limitation which you face and put it across as a disclaimer, that's an absolutely acceptable proposition, right? But not to kind of use it more as a protective measure when the end use could be very different. I think that expectation mismatch till we evolve to something which is common language, common standard. This is the practical approach which I would say, where client are going to derive lots of comfort in terms of an judicious use of disclaimers. Right?
So I think very well said. I think we have spoken a lot, about the challenges of the auditors. But now let's look at the other side, and see, auditors also given a lot of sweat to the project. And end of the day, they expect some kind of an appreciation from the client also, and we work in a very stringent time limits. Mr. Ratho will understand, that, from the other side, a lot of tight deadlines are being given to the auditors. And again, they are expected to, adhere to those deadlines, deliver also at the same time, and again, everybody has to make a mark for themselves. So, Sanjeev bhai, if I can put you, ask you a question as a resolution professional, and wherever you have dealt with any other, professional brothers, anything which has really impressed you, you could really let us know about the auditors.
So as a resolution professional, from the forensic audit perspective, you're saying?
Yes.
Sorry.
Wherever you would have probably dealt with auditors, on the other side, when you have been a resolution professional, anything which would have really impressed you, any skills, any ideas of forensic auditors, and which you could share with the audience.
So I think, Hardik bhai, I think, in my entire experiences on whichever cap I may put in, I think a few things that what one would look forward from a forensic auditor is, of course, is professional skepticism in terms of his ability to identify and be alert to any kind of issues which are there. The auditor, if he has got an analytical mindset, it actually helps in coming up with some kind of conclusions which are very meaningful, and the ability to differentiate between what is significantly important in 1,000 crore loan. If you are coming up with the problems of, say, 2 crores, 3 crores kind of a thing, in nature you would still fit the definition of a fraud or that sense.
Correct. There is no materiality concept.
But is it significant to the transaction? Possibly the answer is no. Does it impact the actual account getting bad? Probably the answer would be no. But there could be still. So I'm saying this ability of an auditor to distinguish and actually think of a big picture clearly, of understanding that what is required to be brought out in terms of the significance and with clarity. I think that would go a lot to my mind in terms of making the reports right, apart from various other factors that I think we have been discussing.
Correct. So, JP, if I can come back to you on this point, you have dealt with so many auditors. Internal, concurrent, statutory, and probably also other special auditors. What are the skill sets in an investigation where, which has been really impressed, you've been impressed by?
So, Hardik, if I were to look at it this way, obviously an internal or a concurrent auditor would be different from a forensic auditor.
Mm.
And within the profession, obviously what we value the most is integrity,
Correct.
right? Professional integrity is obviously the maximum benefit that one can relate to the auditor person. So that is one. Second is his competency, his perseverance to be able to get to the bottom of it.
Mm.
And as we spoke earlier, materiality is very, very important. Distinguishing between what constitutes a fraud and what constitutes a normal business activity is extremely important. And at times, what professionals tend to do is they are unable to bridge the gap at times. So it is extremely important as to the understanding as to what is it that can be construed as a fraud. Now, the definition of fraud is very, very vague. It is not defined by law per se. So that is a bigger challenge. Consequently, we had to go by the English dictionary that is available. But in accounting parlance, I'm sure we understand how and what it means. RBI has also very categorically pointed out. So having taken all these factors into account, it is extremely important that the auditor is able to distinguish between transactions that happen in the normal course of business and transactions that are out of the ordinary course of business. And when we talk of business, it could be different for different industries or different segments. And the borrowing practices could be, I beg your pardon, the lending practices could be slightly different. See, from a banking perspective, in my opinion, the start and end of any transaction is the same, irrespective of the bank. It is only the internal processes which could vary. And accordingly, that is what perhaps the auditor also needs to take into account to understand as to how has the borrower looked at the transactions and whether we could we are able to distinguish as to whether I can take this transaction. For example, if you look at Indian corporates, there are a lot of things which happen. Intercorporate loans, deposits are pandemic. Now we should be in a position to be able to distinguish as to what is it which is there in the normal course of business, related party transactions. There are enough and more controls around it. But all the same, the auditor has to finally exercise his judgment and arrive at a conclusion on this.
Absolutely.
I think I've belabored this point of distinguishing between materiality and business practices per se. So that is extremely important from my perspective, Hardik bhai.
No, very well said. Understanding the business is very imperative for the auditor who's auditing the specific borrower. So, Harshit, your views on this?
No, great. I think building on further on what is already being spelled out in terms of your ability of being in subject matter expertise, right? Knowing that business and industry very well, your focus on materiality, integrity, obviously. I think one specific practice which has really impressed me personally a lot, and I think it helped a lot in terms of huge value addition, right? So technically, your outcome of your any forensic audit or investigation typically ends at bringing the fact on table, obviously, supported with a lot of data. Now, where the real struggle starts, it how to for us as a practitioner, from an industry perspective, how we can make the best use of you to take an action, right? How to convert that into clear, actionable, and that's where there is one gap always exists, that how that outcome which has been brought out by forensic auditor or investigator is related to in breach, in deviation, or in violation of which exact statute, which exact provision, which exact kind of in breach of your internal policy or maybe external kind of a regulatory requirement. It's just a question of taking that one step extra and create a link of whatever your outcome and how it should be or how it is in violation of which exact statute or provision. Now, if that one extra kind of, and so I've seen that practice of forensic auditor go that one extra mile and also offer that as a kind of an outcome. If that's the kind of a huge value additive service which is available, it makes kind of your client highly kind of impressive enough and also make much more equipped to take a very, very concrete action based on the outcome. Otherwise, once the outcome is out, then you are basically struggling with an additional dimension. How do you connect it? Where does it stand with respect to whether to consider that as an acceptable, natural, normal practice versus a practice which is in violation of some kind of statutory provision. So I think I have come across that as a real practical example in terms of how statutory or rather how forensic auditor has an added in value, and how I found it to be really very impressive.
So, I mean, very well said, Harshit, but just a little cue from what you just mentioned. I mean, how would you distinguish something between a business practice, a questionable business practice, and a transaction which could be fraudulent in nature?
Yeah, so it's a subjective, and that's why I'm saying that it builds up over a period of time. So what you as an industry lacks is basically your crystal clear focus in context to your organization, your industry, in terms of what is acceptable as a normal course of business versus what is not. Now that's where the forensic auditor brings in a diverse perspective. By virtue of doing that work across the industry, across the different kind of client, maybe across the different practical situation, that's where based on your kind of practical experience, if you comes across, may not be a kind of really authoritative or subjective, but it's more recommended in nature, then because of this circumstantial evidences, it looks to be more acceptable versus it looks to be completely kind of an out of curve or an outlier kind of practice. So that's where I'm saying that finally, obviously, judgment rests with your client. But I think if you are able to use your experience coming from a diverse perspective and from diverse industry, from a previous kind of experiences, that's going to be very hugely kind of helpful.
Fantastic. So I think just to sum up, I mean, eventually we are looking at auditors being a solution provider, and the stakeholders able to take some conclusive views from the reports. I think that's a fair takeaway from this discussion. I think let's move to our other area of topic of this panel, pricing. I think this is auditors pricing. This is a very tricky subject, again, for auditors, for auditees, we are continuously debating and deliberating, what should be the right pricing matrix and pricing points for a forensic audit. I mean, we are all aware that, this is just not a normal audit. There are some costs which are priced, which are during the audit process. There are certain challenges post the audit process. This could be like visiting the investigating agencies, visiting the courts, hiring of lawyers. There are so many dimensions, in this kind of a practice, So, when it comes to pricing, Sanjeev, I mean, if I can start with you on this point, how would you feel as a practitioner, if I can ask you, Sanjeev, how would you price it right, Sanjeev?
So Hardik, this is a very delicate question, and there is no one simple answer to this. But I think, again, as chartered accountants, as professionals, I think we all need to be thinking long term rather than short term. And forensic audit is also one of those activities, just like any other activity that we have seen earlier, or just like any product, there will always be some demand which will be there. Then there will be too much of supply, which will actually push down the price. And then automatically at some point of time, the low liars will be weeded out, and then only good qualitative firms will sustain. I mean, that's the way any activity develops, and that is how it evolves. And I think you have seen that. We have seen that in concurrent audit. We have seen that in many such audits, many such areas of within our profession also, that there have been churning. A lot of firms have went out of concurrent audits, and then once the price points actually improve, then actually again the valuations or the better pricing structure came in. So I think even in this area, because last 2-3 years, especially after IBC had come in, there had been a tremendous increase in the forensic audits that have been carried out. Now, obviously, there are the challenges that many of us have a feeling that the work gets allotted on the basis of L1 only. But I think as a professional, I think the practice that what I think we need to do is we would need to estimate our cost, and there has to be a cost plus markup mechanism only. I think if we try to think in terms of trying to be L1, probably we will not be able to do qualitative work for it. And then again, we get into a vicious cycle. So that's easier for me to say, but I understand it's a little difficult to do, but I think that's the only right way of doing it, that we need to have a cost plus markup kind of a thing. We need not try and pitch in for every work that is there in the market. We certainly ought not to be among the L1. we certainly need to be factoring in all these elements which you rightly pointed out, that today litigation or post conduct of an audit, there could be a lot of time commitments that could be required for this, which is all packaged within the pricing that you have quoted in the initial stages. So if I have to summarize, I would think that we need to factor in this cost. There has to be a cost plus markup. We need to be competitive as much as possible, understanding that this is what has to be my minimum point of pricing, and uh, take that as the basis, not as really what the other parties are expecting in terms of the lowest price packaging. It may be better to let go some work and work with a limited area of work. I think that's the point that I would think, because then in that case, you are certainly able to establish yourself as a long-term player.
Absolutely, very well said, Sanjeev. But just to add, sometimes people want an entry point of pricing also at times. So that becomes a little challenge for the auditors also, when they are communicating with the auditees. So just from your perspective, since you have also been on the other side, as a director, how do the CVC guidelines, play a role, on the pricing?
So I think in the public sector entities, be it banks, be it public sector undertakings everywhere, I mean, the concept of CVC is always there. But again, in CVC, it is not L1. In CVC, what is really required is that you need to be first on the technical competency, the firms are shortlisted. And then when there is a smaller panel or smaller list of identified vendors, then you have an L1 within that. So in a way, it's not going to be an open-ended L1 across. Now, so first is the technical, second is the financial part of it. And that I think is the fair proposition from any lender's perspective also.
Well said, Sanjeev bhai. JP, your views on pricing, I mean, you've been a banker, so, when you deal with auditors.
So I fully agree with Sanjeev bhai when he mentioned that, look, you definitely need to factor in your costs plus. Now, the fact remains that you need to assess the cost properly, because depending on the quantum of work, the number of years that you need to go back to, the number of entities that you need to look at in terms of arriving at a conclusion. Because if you're taking a group accounts, it is not so simple in Indian scenario where you actually need to look at multiple accounts to be able to arrive at some conclusion. So the quantum of work definitely keeps going. Then the third thing which factors in, I'm actually getting granular now, but the third thing which gets factored in is obviously the number of locations that you need to visit. So all these factors, when you add up, when you aggregate all this, you should be in a position to say that, look, what should be my cost? Because as Sanjeev rightly pointed out, that putting out an L1 for this particular assignment may only win you this assignment. What will hold you in the long term is the quality that you finally deliver. And in case we've compromised on the cost, then perhaps the quality also may not be up to the mark. And hence it's maybe a flash in the pan where one or two assignments are given to start with. Then there is dissatisfaction at the client's end, and the continuation does not happen. So it is very, very imperative, and it is very important that we look at what is our overall cost structure. What is it that I need to cover? Yes, it is possible. I'm sorry, I'm talking from the other side, that it is possible that you may not be able to gauge the costs perfectly, but that's fine. I mean, it's essentially that you are leaving a markup there for yourself, and hence it makes a lot of difference. And again, as Sanjeev mentioned, from a CS perspective, it is not as if you are only looking at the L1. You're looking at competency also. And if you worked with a firm earlier, you might prefer the firm because of your experiences with them. And typically for a private sector lender, they largely go by what the empaneled firms with the IBA or the SEBI. And that's how it's progressing. But having said that, again, it may or may not be L1. It could also be a condition of what is the experience that I have had, I as the client has had with a particular firm. And hence it is imperative that one does not price oneself out of the market or too much out of money. Because second position, obviously your quality suffers. And the first possibility is that you may not get too many assignments. So you have to find a mid path to take it forward.
So what kind of cost do you see the auditors likely to incur after the project is completed?
So see, it's after the project is completed. I don't think there is anything else that an auditor needs to look at it. Maybe people in the profession will be better placed to answer that question, because when I look at it from what are the assignments that come in, who are the firms that are pitching, so we would also look at what is the quantum of work involved, and consequently what are the number of people involved, number of days involved, and accordingly you fix a price point.
Yeah,
and that's how you take it forward.
Correct. But there are always some challenges. The auditor is called after the report has been submitted. He has to visit the banker for presentations. He has to visit the agencies. Whatever. He's called back after 1 year for some clarifications. There are data retention challenges. Again, data has to be retained for a very long period. So the pricing probably we need to factor in a lot of things. Is what I'm getting a cue from you, JP. In that sense, Harshit bhai, your views on this?
Yeah, so obviously the starting point or the fundamental should be on a cost plus margin basis. Now the real challenge which comes when you start executing the assignment is what are the variable pieces, right? So fixed piece is largely attributable, easy to kind of quantify and built into your pricing when you kind of offer your pricing. But when I say variable, in terms of what quantum of kind of engagement of technology is needed, at what intervention, and how costly those technology will be, whether you have it your own capability versus you are likely to engage it some kind of an external solution, what kind of an intervention is needed from a very specialized people like maybe attorneys and lawyers and some kind of an investigation, what's the likely cost associated with that. There's a huge element of what is the variable proportion of your physical activity, maybe in terms of your physical visits, your travel, your ability to collect the physical evidence, and there is a huge variable proportion of cost which is involved with that. If that assignment is needing to have what kind of an intervention with respect to conducting maybe say interview or specialized interrogation, right? If that's the cost, again, it's a huge variable proportion of your cost base. So I think that the challenge is when you finalize the kind of in your model, if you are able to rightly identify what all potential variables which you are likely to encounter, and then basically keep that as a variable, as a flexible kind of an additional ancillary cost which is going to build and get your client into agreement. I am saying that there is actually your client is ready to pay you on a use basis, right? So while you are able to successfully manage your kind of an so-called fixed part, there is a broader agreement where you are at least getting with an assurance that whatever is that maybe little unpredictable variable part which you are likely to encounter, which may be impacting your margin, but you have a client onboarded with you in terms of making good of you. So I think that's one, your ability to rightly identify and get client agreement with respect to variable portion is one critical thing in terms of rightly go for a kind of a good pricing. Second thing, obviously, I think it's a very native or very initial stage. But if you look at it, Western world, and in terms of how this piece of model has evolved, how some of the multinationals are successfully exercising, eventually there is going to be gradual, slow but gradual shift towards the more of an outcome-based pricing, right? It's a very dangerous proposition from a risk professional, if I have to say, because the underlying risk, if you have to purely link with the outcome, could be very difficult to quantify. A lot of maybe unlimited liabilities. So sometimes it is not very recommended, dangerous to link it purely with the fully outcome-based pricing. But somewhere that shift should start happening in terms of once you establish a relationship is established. If you wanted to make it very sustainable with your client, maybe you can start thinking to link something, some proportion of your revenue, some proportion of pricing purely linked with the outcome, which is also viewed positively by your client as a value addition. So you add a value and kind of get some proportion of that as a part of your revenue. Something easy to start with in the context of forensic audit or investigator is, sometimes I have seen very initial stage, some proportion of your revenues linked to your client's ability to actually recover the money. This is the work which you have done, right? maybe it's a different way to look at it, but some of the organizations are now starting to kind of happy to kind of link your some of the incentive based on their ability to recover, right? So I think that's another dimension. That shift will eventually happen slowly but steadily once people will get a comfortable relationship to slowly move from pure cost plus margin to slightly more of an outcome driven or more of a value driven kind of pricing.
Okay. Outcome driven pricing, probably, I'm not very sure if that could be permissible by our code. But Sanjeev, if you could, it's a very good point. I mean, Sanjeev, if you could throw some light, on this performance guarantees being seeked at times, from audit fraternity, and this outcome based pricing from a code of ethics, could you give some insight on this?
So Hardik, with respect to our code of conduct, what I recollect is, of course, a few years back when I was in the council, actually we had a resolution cleared from the council at that point of time. Earlier, there was no percentage, no fees that could have been charged on percentage basis. So certain services have been covered to be which are now permitted to be charged on the basis of outcome based. And some of the examples were, of course, like project finance kind of thing, and then even in internal audit that you are able to have some kind of a benefit and you could have. So possibly if some of the services under this element also is getting covered under that, I'm not very sure, but I think there are very high chances that this would also get covered under the permissible list of activities. So people can look at, I think somewhere around 2013 or around there, it will be there as part of our code of ethics that this relaxation has come in. Today you can charge fees on the basis of percentage of work, which was not there for years together. And I think still it has missed the attention of many of our practicing chartered accountants. So one could look at it from that perspective.
Correct, but it cannot be an outcome.
So as I said, in the case of internal audit, it is allowed. So for example,
okay.
So because offhand I may not be able to remember the exact wordings, but I do recollect in spirit what was permitted is that we had evaluated actually that what are the kind of work that the council had evaluated, that what are the kind of activities where the nature of business has translated that the client wants to pay services fees on the basis of the output. And internal audit, one of those dimensions were that, okay, that I can do so much of cost saving for you. So the promoter says that, okay, do that cost and take a particular percentage. So that is now permitted. So I guess this would also be possibly fitting within the same purview, but I think one can check on that, but more or less it is certain that it will be permitted.
And your thoughts on performance guarantees, I mean, ideally I would assume they are not permitted, but
I don't think that there is any clarity on that there is no, as far as institute is concerned, I don't recollect any specific element which prohibits or permits, the performance guarantees to be given or not to be given. And when anything is neither exclusively permitted or not exclusively prohibited, it is left to the user.
Okay. No, very well said off, Sanjeev bhai. So just, I mean, like I started off, today has been a very interesting day that, if I may just a little bit digress from this discussion, and this multidisciplinary partnership firm concept has now been approved, your thoughts on the forensic practice, how this could change the practice here. I mean, naturally, because in a forensic practice, we tend to work with members from the other professions also.
So Hardik, I will go first on this. This actually was the intentions had been there from right since 2006 when the Chartered Accountants Act was amended in 2006. However, in spite of best efforts by the institutes, it had not worked out till date. And broadly, what I recollect is, of course, that this arrangement could now be with chartered accountants, between chartered accountants, cost accountants, company secretaries, architects, lawyers, and if I'm not mistaken, I think engineers. I think these were the 6 categories. So if you look at it from forensic perspective, probably a tie-up with lawyers and advocates possibly would be of great help. I'm not too sure under this MDP guidelines whether there was any amendment required under the Bar Council for the advocates to be permitted to be joining us, because CAs, CS and cost accountants possibly were the easier elements where it was all being covered under the MCA. I'm not so sure whether the advocates can join in immediately or not. I think we need to study that a little closely. But at least a beginning has happened. It has taken 15 years since the act was passed in 2006, and now these regulations have come in 2021. But hopefully, I think at least once the initial things have happened, I think gradually we'll have all the other professions also in place.
No, fantastic. Very well said, Sanjeev. I mean, a lot of efforts have gone by our various councils of the past and the current to get this, and I think it's a very welcome steps. In that sense. I think with this, I think we can just sum up. We're coming to close of the session, so we can just sum up on this session that we have taken up. 3-4 major points. Of course, privacy is very critical. This is a fact-finding report activity. Again, art of story writing. We discuss art of story writing, but again, this being a fact-finding report, there is a very limited scope for digressing from the facts here. Limitation of times. Somebody, one of you said that yes, there is a challenge of limitation of time, but we need to give the best within this limited time. Again, utility of the report, the stakeholders would always wish to ensure that the report comes to them with the complete solution or the view. Of course, there could be some disclaimers in the reports, and disclaimers are required also by the auditors, again, to safeguard their interest also. The objectives, of course, has to be very clear. And so I think I think very well summed up by everybody of you. Thank you very much for your time this Friday evening. And Arpit, if you could now take the session.
Amazing. I think wonderful, brilliant, deliberations and what answers that we've got. So some questions, if you allow us, the panelists allow us, we can take some questions. So maybe this question is, if Baxi sir, if you could answer this question, how the disclaimers affect the impact of the report findings in a court case?
I mean, it's still evolving, so there are no crystal clear yes and no in terms of because that's where the outcome, once it's presented and you've taken help of your legal firm, that's where it kind of takes the regulatory landscape is not fully clear in terms of what exact treatment to be given to a disclaimer. But I think the way it has been viewed in a court of law is that, underlying the circumstances and intent of those disclaimers, right? So if you're able to connect it with the kind of what exactly the root cause of the disclaimer, that's where I am seeing that decision is taken in terms of considering it as a permissible or no within the court of law. So that's the way kind of an underlying principle works.
Any alternate thoughts, Ratho sir or Sanjeev sir? So yesterday, I'll tell you the context here. For example, while we were discussing with Sardar Patil Sahab, who was the Assistant Commissioner EOW, he mentioned that when you given these disclaimers, when you given these kind of reports or something, till the time it is with them, it's okay. But in the courts, most of the time, it becomes helpful for the the accused or the person who we have framing, and they get loopholes. Their lawyers, they exploit these loopholes, and the entire efforts that we do over this entire period goes for a toss. So I think that's the context, and when we say with the limited data that we have done this forensic, sir, that's always going to be an inherent intrinsic thing, right? Sanjeev, yes.
No, I was just saying that I think the right person to answer this should be actually Hardik Chokshi.
So, but he's playing a different role today. And,
no, maybe, but then for the benefit of the participants, maybe Hardik can take up this question, possibly because I'm saying more particularly only from the perspective that he is actually dealing on many assignments with the investigative agencies, so possibly he can throw a little better light on this.
So, Hardik, do you have any take on this? Disclaimers in our reports?
So my personal view is that disclaimers are again we do not have currently forensic standards being notified. So naturally we are working in an environment where there are challenges on the ground, and like Mr. Baxi also mentioned, there could be two views coming out, a business practice or a fraudulent practice, So again, for an auditor to start interpreting things in an environment which requires you to bring out a fact-finding report, there will always be some debate, we have to give a right of natural justice, to the opposite party also. So if we are submitting a report without management response, the report is subject to litigations because everybody has a right to natural justice. So again, I believe that I genuinely feel that at the start of any audit, one should definitely enter into an engagement terms with the appointing agency, because these engagement terms again will be, and we have engagement terms of special purpose assignments. So, we can definitely enter into good engagement terms, well-defined engagement terms, what the roles of the auditors are, what are the responsibilities, what are the limitations that could be, what are the liabilities which the auditors would be looked at, and what liabilities they will not be responsible towards, because again, sometimes bankers expect too much. They say that, you say that there's a loss happened, or you say that there is a fraud happened, and you should be responsible for any losses. I mean, auditor cannot be responsible for a loss. He's only doing an audit. So again, having these disclaimers in the perspective is very critical in every audit report. I personally believe that the audit report should have those necessary disclaimers, so that when the report goes to the concerned stakeholders or investigating agencies or the court of law, the auditor has said that, see, I have given this report, but these are certain challenges which were there, and I have brought it out to the notice.
And one of the biggest thing that we work in an ecosystem is we don't have rights to confiscate data. We don't get any power to get or extract the data, or maybe the hard disk or the computers or files or whatever. These come only when these agencies get involved, which have been given powers by the statute themselves. So I think that's that. So I think disclaimers therefore definitely should make a part of it. And I don't know, the cost of litigation comes through disclaimers. I don't know that really happens. But yes, forensic reports do get challenged in the court of law very, very often. Right. Great. Any other question? We've got one more. Enhance brand image of profession for successful assignments considering COVID-19 challenges for virtual forensic. No, I think that's very, very. It's a very too much to ask for. If forensic also is done virtual, I think. I don't know. Anyone has a take? If really, do you believe forensic is a hard fact-finding thing and evidence that you need? So you cannot do it really virtually. Is what I understand. But anyone has a different view, so please feel free to. Ratho sir, if you have anything.
I agree with you. Now, a forensic audit obviously has a very specific stake. So doing it virtually is nigh impossible.
Yeah.
Because not only are you required to do physical visits, you're also maybe taking stock counts and whatever else. Maybe the only thing that you could do offsite is your transaction assessments. That's it.
Right.
But
maybe
yeah, absolutely. Transaction analysis is what you could do, but everything else requires on-site visits per se.
Great. What a wonderful session that we've had so far. Any questions, if anyone would have, let's take them now. And if not, we should bid adieu to this wonderful panel. Hardik bhai, great work. And thank you, Sanjeev sir. You've been always there like a mentor to all of us. And, you've created a lot of meaningful discussions today. So I think thank you for your time and presence on this platform. Rathoji, absolutely great intelligence that you brought in, coming from a very good regulatory background and then internal audit head. Baxi sir, of course, you've been different from the other two panel, coming from the other side of the table. So I think very, very mixed views and a very, very balanced kind of session that we had. Thank you, each one of you, and Baxi sir, especially you, because at a very short notice, we had requested you to be here with us. And, we are in those times that you never know who can fall ill or who can fall sick at any point of time. So good, we are lucky that we are alive, and we are lucky that we are right now on this panel. So let's stay that way. I hope all of you do well. Okay, Ojasji has asked you to share the link of the place. Okay, sure, Ojasji. We have one more day to go, Ojasji, and that will be done. We'll share all of this with you. Let me now move towards my colleague Rajesh bhai. Rajesh bhai, if you could please deliver a very well-deserved and a loud vote of thanks for this wonderful panel that we had. and the wonderful moderator, a very experienced moderator when it comes to forensics, Hardik Bhai. Over to you, Rajesh ji. You're on mute, Rajesh Bhai.
Really, it was thrilling for me because just now, recently, I have completed my FAFD batch, and practically, I have seen some discussion, which was I just trying to link my syllabus, which I have recently completed in FAFD batch. It's really thanks to all panelists, Sanjeev sir, JP Rathod sir, Hardik sir, and our moderator Hardik Bhai, all for your sparing your valuable time and key insights with respect to the forensic audit, accounting, and fraud investigation. I really thank on behalf of WIRC all participants and on my behalf. I again thank you all. It was really a nice session and value addition for all my participants and absolutely for me also. Thank you, Arpit sir, for giving me chance to.
Sure, Rajesh Bhai, thank you.
Thank you, Rajesh Bhai. I think you've been good.
Tomorrow we meet, friends. Tomorrow we meet again for the last day of this refresher course. We've got a wonderful panel again. Durgesh Pandey, who was supposed to join us on the first day, he's been graceful enough because he was sick, and therefore he said, "Give me a chance to come on the last day at least." And he's gonna address. He comes again from a very strong background of working with agencies, so he's gonna create wonderful experience and conversations for us. We'll be joined by tomorrow by another GM from IDBI Bank. Who would be talking us on various things that he looks at from a banker perspective to this, and again a panel discussion that we had. Tomorrow we'll have a panel discussion amongst practicing professionals, and probably the nuances that we are facing in maybe these accounting investigations, and not to mention the expectations of stakeholders and how do we meet them. Rushabh really highlighted that, we cannot really conclude, we cannot really pronounce someone guilty while we are just stating the facts. I think on ground, reality is much more different. And, we get a lot of stress and pressure in terms of concluding our reports very, very effectively and, maybe announcing whether fraud or not fraud or whatever XYZ. So I think all of this tomorrow we'll have a good action tomorrow as well. And so hope to see you all tomorrow for the last session. Thank you once again, and from here at WIRC, we thank you, each one of you, Sanjeev ji once again, JP Rathos ji once again, and Harshit sir. Thank you very much for joining us at such a short notice, and it was really wonderful. I hope you enjoyed it as well. Hardik Bhai, you made it wonderful today. Thank you, Hardik Bhai. And I must really also thank Hardik Bhai for helping me set up this entire series of forensics. Time and again, we are trying to deliver on a very, very qualitative purpose when it comes to forensics. All right, friends, that's it from our side. WIRC says goodbye to you. See you tomorrow again. Stay safe and see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Maheshwari, please stop the recording and let's upload for further viewing.